Recently, we sat down with our friends, Zolli and Sis, to talk about race relations, previously on part 1.
To me, when you start putting a label on things, it kind of has a tendency to add a little bit of stigma along with the past that is brought along with it.
You are valuable in the Lord, and that is what you're going to walk in, you know. And it separates me from culture.
Yeah.
And when you separate yourself from culture and know your value in the Lord,
That's right.
a lot of people will prefer culture than their value in the Lord. And so that's where we stand. And that's why we're here today to talk about that, because we can talk about just about anything, especially with our culture.
I grew up in Mississippi. It's known to be a racist place, and has a history of some bad things that have taken place. But my father never brought that stuff up to me when I was being raised. One of my best friends was a white guy, and I always wondered why my black friends was like, "What are you doing hanging out with him?" Who, Dwayne?
Yeah.
It's Dwayne.
Yeah.
What's the deal?
Right.
But they never would come out and say it. But I realized that after I got a little bit older, because he was a white dude, I'm like, that ain't fair to him.
Right.
And several other folks that my dad and I were friends with, people just thought it was so weird. But the way my father raised me, that's the way it should be. You don't look at a person for their skin color. Right. You look at a person for what they can bring to the relationship, value to the relationship. Growing up in the era that I grew up in, because my school was predominantly black, and there were white kids in there, and they were treated horribly. And that was horrible to me. And I would go home and complain to my dad, and dad would do something about it. Well, I did. I stuck up for him because it was the right thing to do. But yet, black folks looked at me like it was something wrong with me. But I knew it wasn't. Even though I wasn't raised in a Christian home, but I just knew, and I felt good with the decisions that I made to take care of those folks.
It was morally right.
Yeah, it was just morally right. And as I got older, I realized that was an actual Christian principle. In the time and era that I did in Mississippi, and then moving from Mississippi to here, been around different races, it was somewhat a culture shock because of what I was used to. But I knew how to treat people. Even though in that racist, and I'll just go ahead and say it, you got black people can be racist too. Growing up in that racist.
Everybody can.
Yes.
Everybody. I was going to bring that up.
I'll say this, but a lot of people don't think that black people can be racist. I'll say they can be, because I lived it where I lived in Mississippi. And moving up here, there was no problem with me just treating a person like they were a person. Right. And it was just a part of my everyday upbringing that my father had brought me up into.
When I was telling you about my grandfather, where when we moved to Tennessee, like 28, 29 years ago, my dream was for my grandfather to come here to visit, to go to my graduation, and I had all of these, happy things going on in my head.
He's out of state.
Yeah, he's out of state, so, come on, let's travel. But he never would. He wouldn't come here for birthdays. He wouldn't come here for anything. He would not leave Indiana for anything. And so finally, when he was, I think he was sick, and I asked my grandmother, I said, Grandma, it was me and her in her living room, and we got to talk personally. I asked her why was my grandfather so close to traveling down south, and if I say anything to him about traveling down south, he didn't want to talk about it. He didn't say anything. And so she said, oh my goodness, you're ready to kill me if I told you this. She said, but here's the story. His daddy wanted to replace him because of his father messing around with this white lady back in the day, and he got her pregnant, and her people were Ku Klux Klan. And so my great-grandfather made my grandfather step up and say that he got her pregnant, because my great-grandfather was married to my grandfather's mom, and he shouldn't have been doing it in the first place. But he wanted my grandfather to take up the rap for what he did. And so the Ku Klux Klan were going to kill my grandfather. And so he ran. He left. He got his stuff. He left, and he never turned back. So here it is, a case like that. So there's a generation of our family out there. I don't know whether she might have aborted the baby or just what. Don't know. But that's how the story went. And so he never set foot back in the South. and he never talked about it, and he did not want you to ask him about it either.
I talked to my father about 2 or 3 weeks ago in regards to the property that we own in Mississippi, 190 acres. And I asked him, I said, where did the land come from? I said, glad you asked. He said, your grandfather was friends with a white guy way back in the late 60s, 70s. And they were such good friends, the guy, I forgot what the family's name is, told my grandfather he could have the land for $5,000 and just pay me whenever you want. But my grandfather, you know, black guy, white guy, as not a common thing in Mississippi, he was very adamant about having this property paid off. Mm-hmm. So the white guy took, I wish I knew his name, I would call him white guy, took my grandfather to the bank and said, hey, I want to sell my land to Mr. DeWitt Mallon. And the bank said, okay. And they, based off the white guy's recommendation, gave my grandfather the loan. And because my grandfather hated debt, he quickly paid that off within like 2 or 3 years. Mm-hmm. And based off of that relationship that they had, which in Mississippi wasn't supposed to happen, we were able to get the land that we still have to this day. Even though there was racism going on, but it's all about how you treat people.
Yeah. Right.
And their wives, my grandfather's wife, and I wish I knew the guy's name, the white guy's wife, they were best friends also. Mm-hmm. And they shared a common thing with each other. Mm. But it goes to show you just treating people how you want to be treated. Yeah, sure. It can carry on for generations.
Go a long way.
Now this land that we own, based off of what my grandfather acquired because of the relationship, is something I could pass on to my boys.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yep.
You know, Zolli, and with a story like that with your grandfather and the white guy, they were going through that, and they had that kind of relationship in the 60s, 70s, when race relations were probably at their height.
Yes, in Mississippi.
And that just goes to prove that it can be turned around.
Yes.
Yes.
And it, like you said, it's all about how we treat one another.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And to see, it makes sense now to me why my father raised me the way, because that was the way he was raised.
Right.
And so on and so forth with my kids, because we don't get into this race baiting type of conversations with people because it's just a trap. Mm-hmm. And again, now that I'm a Christian and I know through God's Spirit who I am created to be, I know that's what Satan wants, for us to create separation. So that for sure is a motivation for us to raise our kids not like that.
Yes.
I don't want them to be a pawn or a trap of Satan to create division wherever they go.
On our travels, we've gone to a lot of places that cover a lot of history, a lot of Civil War history, and there's the talk of slavery at all of them. And our kids, especially little Miss Homemaker the other day, she said, they treated people like that? You know, a person would treat a person like that? So we don't hide, we don't protect our children from history. We teach them what happened. We teach them, yes, that was very wrong, and it's regretful. And
what heritage is and what inheritances are. Mm-hmm. And our inheritance is kingdom. Number one, God said it's kingdom. It took me a minute to understand what that meant. Okay. I'm still learning that every single day. So what I'm doing is, Tiffany, sis, is looking at what my inheritance is. Mm-hmm. Where my inheritance is. Okay. So even though that we have our earthly inheritance, but the kingdom inheritance is even more so. Mm-hmm. And that's where our direction comes from. Every time I think of an example, and I've dealt with prejudices from black folks, from white folks, from, you know, different, all kind of color folks. But how I would approach it back then, you fight it. You fight it, and you fight it with the words that they're using against you. But see, now it's not God. Jesus shows us that example over and over and over again. And finally, I got tired of hitting my head in the same area. Because you heard what I said, he set the example.
Yeah.
Okay, so you have ancestors. You have, you know, some of our, not some, but ancestors who were slaves and laid the foundation and lost their lives and were martyrs and all. Well, there was a history even before slavery. And there was another history called slavery. Jesus was in that history. So I don't ever leave him out of the equation when it comes around to Black History Month, or all these months. It's always a month that is labeled. But see, for the one who sacrificed his life for us to live every single day, it's not recognized the way that these quote-unquote holidays that come to honor color, no matter what skin color you are, but to honor color. But he's starting to be left out of the equation more and more and more and more. And that is what he brings to my heart. Do you see how foolish my people are acting? Do you see when it gets closer to this holiday how foolish they start acting? So my thing is, it's a mindset, and it's what you're institutionalized to.
Right.
So we're raising our children to be institutionalized to King Jesus, to the kingdom of God.
Right.
Because if we don't, then we're going to set them up for failure and allow the world to devour them.
Next time on Race Relations Part 3, we ask each other, what do you really want me to know about you and your race?
Going down the tubes. Yeah. And Satan is sitting there waiting on. A lot of times you don't have to work as hard to. All you got to do is throw a little bit of race baiting in there. Next thing you know, we're going off the deep end.
Yep. Absolutely. Well, from my perspective of it, how did you start out?
I don't remember.